It has been said pro wrestling is an unforgiving business that has had its fair share of tragic stories, but there is none more controversial than the Chris Benoit tragedy. If you are a lifelong fan of wrestling, then you're quite familiar with this story, but for those who are not familiar with the Rabid Wolverine, then let this serve as a reminder as to why the name Chris Benoit has not been uttered on WWE television for 18 years. Some of you in the comments have asked me if I think the WWE will ever discuss Benoit on its programming ever again, or perhaps even consider him for the Hall of Fame. Now, these are all fair questions, but in order to answer it, we must conduct a little bit of a rewind. Born May 21st, 1967 in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, Chris Benoit knew from a young age that he was destined for pro wrestling. Dedicating his entire life to this craft, he transformed his mind and body into one that would be nearly obsessed with the business. Described as one of the greatest in-ring technicians, Benoit would become one of the most revered and respected figures in this sport. However, despite a career filled with memorable moments and classic matches, it would all be overshadowed and essentially erased because of one tragic weekend. On June 24th, 2007, the WWE held its Vengeance Night of Champions event in Houston, Texas. It was at this event that Chris Benoit would compete against a young CM Punk for the ECW World Championship. Except the match would never take place as Benoit would fail to appear, leading to concerned WWE officials requesting authorities conduct a welfare check on the Benoit household. It was then discovered that the entire Benoit family was now deceased, so in response to such a shocking turn of events, the WWE decided to dedicate the following episode of Monday Night Raw paying tribute to Benoit and his family. A program filled with candid interviews, emotional testimonies, and highlights from Benoit's career aired in a now eerie edition of Raw that can no longer be found except for the smallest of corners of the internet. Throughout the course of the broadcast, more details began to be revealed, and a much darker truth had been realized. It could not be overstated how tremendous of an athlete Chris Benoit was in between those ropes. On top of this, he was also able to amass a decorated career that resulted in championship wins across the WWE, WCW, ECW, and New Japan Pro Wrestling. Benoit's crowning moment, however, would take place at WrestleMania 20 in 2004, where he would capture the World Heavyweight Championship, defeating the likes of Shawn Michaels and Triple H. The event would close as confetti would fall from the ceiling as Benoit celebrated his title win alongside close friend Eddie Guerrero, who was the then reigning WWE champion. Two best friends who did not fit the traditional mold of the WWE machine were on top of the wrestling world, providing the ultimate feel-good moment for fans. The friendship between Benoit and Guerrero spanned across their time in Japan to ECW to WCW, and eventually they would leave World Championship Wrestling for the WWE in January of 2000. During the early years of Benoit's time with the WWE, his matches with Kurt Angle, Eddie Guerrero, and Triple H were standouts, but it was his time as a member of the fan-favorite SmackDown 6 that set him apart from the rest. The SmackDown 6 consisted of Edge, Kurt Angle, Rey Mysterio, Chavo, and Eddie Guerrero, as well as Benoit. These 6 men would be featured in various matches that consistently stole the show. Whether it was a tag team match, a triple threat match, or simply a one-on-one affair, we could always count on these performers to produce magic. This would serve as the launching pad for Benoit as he quickly became a fan favorite for his grit and wrestling prowess. It would lead to him winning the 2004 Royal Rumble match in an Iron Man performance that earned him a title match for his choice at WrestleMania. Benoit would transfer over to Monday Night Raw, and of course, this is where he would win the world title that was mentioned earlier. Following that title win, Benoit was featured alongside top names in the business and recognized as a reliable hand among the members of the roster. While Benoit was seemingly at the top of his game, his friend Guerrero was providing a masterclass through his heel work versus Rey Mysterio. But as sudden as the rise, so was the fall, as Eddie Guerrero would be found dead in his hotel room on November 13th, 2005. Less than 2 years following their in-ring celebration, Benoit had lost his closest friend. Guerrero's passing hit Benoit hard as he would become visibly emotional during an on-screen interview for the Eddie Guerrero tribute show. Benoit's career would carry on as he would defend the United States Championship against the likes of Booker T, JBL, Chavo Guerrero, and MVP, but that run would come to an end as he would be drafted to the recently rebooted ECW brand in June of 2007. That would be on screen. However, behind the scenes, Benoit's personal life took a turn as he would grow increasingly depressed, angry, and distant to those around him. Reports have been shared that he would carry a journal around with him in which he would speak with his dear friend Guerrero as a way to cope with this loss. On June 19, 2007, Benoit would defeat Elijah Berg in a match that earned him an opportunity for the vacant ECW World title. It was official. For the first time ever, CM Punk versus Chris Benoit with the ECW World Championship on the line at Vengeance Night of Champions. Now, leading up to that weekend's event, Benoit would not appear for the preceding house shows, informing the office that his family was suffering from food poisoning. Once Benoit failed to arrive in Houston for the Night of Champions event, concern began to rise with the WWE requesting that welfare check, as well as a last-minute replacement in the form of Johnny Nitro. Fans cheered for the missing Benoit as the match carried on, with Nitro winning the gold, and ironically enough, it was later revealed that Benoit was scheduled to win the ECW title that night, becoming a prominent figure in the ECW reboot. Once it was discovered what had happened to the Benoit family, the WWE pivoted to a tribute show for Monday Night Raw, but during the broadcast of the show, speculation about foul play became apparent. Upon assessment, it was determined that over the course of the weekend, Chris's wife Nancy and their son Daniel's lives had ended prior to the eventual end of Benoit's, which was by his own doing. Little of this made sense, but once pieces of the puzzle were placed together, it became clear the entire tragedy came at the hands of one individual, that suspect in question being Chris Benoit. The toxicology reports revealed Nancy had levels of Xanax and a list of pain medication at therapeutic levels rather than toxic, and as for their son Daniel, he had a dose of Xanax in his system that suggested he was sedated at the time of his death. Benoit, however, had pain medication, Xanax, and elevated levels of testosterone found in his system, with the indication that it was due to deficient levels due to previous steroid abuse. Experts and analysts suggested there was no indication of roid rage during this incident, but it would leave more questions than answers. So former pro wrestler and now neuroscientist Christopher Nowinski contacted Chris's father, Michael Benoit, who had then suggested the possibility of brain trauma as a result of his wrestling. Once tests were completed, it was determined that Benoit had the brain of an Alzheimer's patient in their 80s with advanced signs of dementia. This would be around the time that the NFL was experiencing their own tragic list of brain trauma with the ongoing CTE studies. CTE, also known as chronic traumatic encephalopathy, is a result of severe blows to the head that could distort the mind of the individual. Those closest with Benoit revealed that in his final days, he expressed a level of paranoia as if someone was following him, leading to him taking alternate routes to routine places like home or the gym. There were also the eerie messages that he would send to fellow wrestler Chavo Guerrero amongst other co-workers. Ultimately, the WWE decided to separate itself from Chris Benoit by refusing to utter his name on any form of its programming. There is no mention of Benoit over the course of the last 18 years, and although the archival footage remains, it is as if he simply ceased to exist following the tragic events in June of 2007. There is no doubt in my mind that the WWE will never induct Benoit into its Hall of Fame, let alone mention him by name. It's probably for the best, as it would open the door to more controversy, which is the last thing TKO would want in the current climate of the business. One thing remains for sure. Benoit dedicated his entire life to wrestling, leaving no room for anything else. It was important that what he accomplished within the ring would be his lasting legacy. However, due to the circumstances, his name will never be shared on a mainstream platform within the business, as his lasting legacy will unfortunately be that fateful weekend in Georgia. It is up to the fans to choose how they will remember Chris Benoit, because as we approach 20 years, there is a new generation of fans who never saw him compete live, and only have these reports to go by. In the immediate aftermath following this tragedy, the WWE took measures in order to prevent any future incidents. It was also an opportunity to play damage control concerning the public perception of wrestling. The WWE, which was primarily recognized as a TV-14 program, would now be under a PG format and banned blading, severe chair shots to the head, and took serious measures for their wellness program, which was already being enforced following the passing of Eddie Guerrero. Although a portion of the audience were not in favor of the toned-down violence, on WWE TV, it has proven to be a positive direction as a means to protect the athletes. It has been said pro wrestling is an unforgiving business that has had its fair share of tragic stories, but there is none more controversial than the Chris Benoit tragedy. If you're a lifelong fan of wrestling, then you are quite familiar with this story, but for those who are not familiar with the rabid Wolverine, you are now. Hey, thank you all for joining me in today's video. If you find topics like these interesting, make sure you like the video or comment down below some other suggestions for video topics. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel for more pro wrestling content. Of course, my name is Jose Ramos Jr. Thank you for joining me in today's video, and I'll see you all in the next one.